Now, the World Today team was intrigued by the election results in Brazil. It is the presidential win of Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva in Brazil that caught the eye of the World Today team. A narrow victory, the Latin American left has completed its strategic dominance over the region's 7 largest countries. Brazil joins the pink tide, or what we can call a return of the pink tide. We'll explain how that affects South American position in geopolitics and the rising influence of China in the region.
Shock and awe. Jair Bolsonaro, the last right-winger standing, has been beaten, not broken. While the left has come to power in Brazil, the incumbent was defeated by a 1.8% margin. Lula da Silva won 50.9% of the vote and Bolsonaro won 49.1% of the vote. It's a stunning comeback for a politician who could not run in the last presidential election in 2018 because he was in jail and banned from standing for office. He had been found guilty of receiving a bribe from a Brazilian construction firm in return for contracts with Brazil's state oil company Petrobras. Lula spent 580 days in jail before his conviction was annulled and he returned to the political fray.
Brazil is my cause. The people are my cause. To fight misery is what I live for until my dying breath. A big hug to all, and may God protect me until I start my journey on January 1st.
A nossa jornada a partir de 1º de janeiro.
While the world welcomed the results with messages pouring in from all quarters, they were in shock, as were Bolsonaro and his supporters in the country, leading to chaotic scenes across Brazil. Truckers who support Brazil's outgoing president Bolsonaro escalated their protests on Monday, October the 31st, blocking roads in 16 states in an action that could affect agricultural exports in one of the world's top food producers. Protesters draped in Brazilian flags marched down highway Helio Schmidt, the main access road to Sao Paulo's airport, with some being detained by armed police. Others were on the side of the road, blowing horns, while some knelt and prayed. Bolsonaro himself remained silent for 2 days before finally conceding.
As manifestações pacíficas sempre serão bem-vindas.
Peaceful demonstrations would always be welcome, but that our methods can't be the same as those used by the left, which always harm the population, such as invasion of lands, disrespecting property, and impeding the right to come and go.
Destruição de patrimônio e cerceamento do direito de ir e vir.
It will not be easy for Lula to ride the pink tide, since lawmakers close to Bolsonaro won a majority in Congress. This means that President Lula will face stiff opposition to his policies in the legislative body when he takes office on the 1st of January. But Lula, who has served 2 terms in office between January 2003 and December 2010, is no stranger to forging political alliances. Will that mean that there would be compromises to his socialist policies?
A expectativa muito grande com a volta do ex-presidente Lula é justamente...
There is a very high expectation on regards to social issues with the return of former President Lula. With the return of President Lula, there may be progress in the fight against social inequality, in the fight against poverty, and in the advancement of social services. This problem can be faced precisely because of this expectation from the population that voted for him.
Parte da população que votou nele, que essa questão possa ser enfrentada.
After a hiatus of right-wing governments, the left has wrested power in most of South America. The first pink tide happened during the late 1990s and early 2000s. A second pink tide encompassed elections in late 2010s to the early 2020s. A resurgence of the pink tide kicked off in Mexico in 2018, Argentina in 2019, and further cemented by Bolivia in 2020, along with Peru, Honduras and Chile in 2021. And then Colombia and Brazil in 2022, with Colombia electing the first left-wing president in their history, followed by Brazil in October 2022. The current trend to oust incumbent rulers is a reaction against the twin challenges of the pandemic and the recession that hit the region in 2020, but also one which has seen growing influence of China in the region that's turning red. China's role in Latin America has grown rapidly since 2000, promising economic opportunities even while raising concerns over Beijing's influence and the debt traps that come with these opportunities.
China has made huge inroads into South America, and rightly so. China is their biggest supplier of raw materials, finished products, market, certainly agriculture, as Brazil has. The US doesn't have that kind of presence anymore.
Beijing has also expanded its diplomatic, cultural and military presence. Most recently, it has leveraged its support in the fight against COVID-19, supplying the region with medical equipment, loans and hundreds of millions of vaccine doses. But the United States and its allies fear that Beijing is using these relationships to pursue its geopolitical goals. China's state firms are major investors in the region's energy, infrastructure and space industries, and the country has surpassed the United States as South America's largest trading partner. There is no one-rule-for-all strategy that can be adopted in a politically diverse region such as Latin America. Each country in the region has its history and distinct relationship with China. There's no unified Latin America view in China either, as opposed to the West and the US, which view countries through the prism of democracies versus autocracies formulation and push governments to pick sides. That certainly has backfired.
Abraço, gente, e até a vitória, se Deus quiser, no dia 30 de outubro.